Prince Inyana. I'm a DevOps engineer and technical writer, and today we're going to be talking about writing style guides. For this presentation, we're going to cover what a writing style guide is. We're going to go through why you need a writing style guide. We're going to go through some popular style guides. I'm going to end it up with how to create a style guide. Let's go. Before we go further, I'd like to talk about this analogy. Now, let's say you have a documentation site in mind. You want to build a documentation, and then you gather 10 writers and say, okay, hello guys, let's come together, let's build this documentation. And you didn't give them a set of rules. So I say, okay, go, and after 2 weeks, bring your documents, we compile them together, and boom, we have a documentation site. So writer A will write on writing style guides, writer B will write on whatever sections and bring them together. Now the problem with this is you're going to have 10 different people working on one document, right? Without proper rules for formatting or editing that document, you're going to have 10 different styles of writing all in one documentation. And this can cause confusions for your reader. So that's where writing style guides come in. Exactly. What is a writing style guide? A writing style guide is a set of rules that govern how you create, you edit, and you format your documents. Basically, they are standards for writing and formatting, right? They tell you what is and what is not allowed when writing or when creating your documents. It's similar to the rules that govern English language, if you like to put it that way. And what's the main purpose of a writing style guide? Right? The primary purpose is that they help your documentation to be consistent across various mediums. So just like the analogy from the documentation site, you're not going to have your readers thinking that 10 people wrote this, even though they did, right? The reader is going to just assess your document and see the unified flow from section 1 to section 2 to the last. You're not going to figure out that, oh, what happened in section 1? The listing was like this, then section 2, the listing is like this. Is there something there? Is there something I should know? When there is actually really nothing there. So it helps you to clearly express your information to the reader to avoid all forms of confusion. And that leads us to why exactly a writing style guide is important. Why do you need them? Now, the first one is you're going to enhance your brand representation. Now, take for example the MDN or Digital Ocean blog. When a reader goes there to read an article, they are most likely to know the distinction from other blogs, right? This is because the writers for MDN or Digital Ocean follow a particular guide which governs them and helps them to build the brand of MDN or Digital Ocean. Now, with a good brand representation, readers can trust your document and they will always keep coming back for more. And that's what a writing style guide helps you achieve. If you follow a consistent pattern of writing, readers can always trust the kind of content you're bringing out and they will always keep coming back. The second one is it reduces the cognitive load on readers. Now, what does cognitive load means, right? It means the amount of information a reader has to break down just to digest your information. Now, if you don't follow a writing style guide, the user first has to spend time deciphering your content before he goes ahead to digest the information, right? And that's going to take time. And if this deciphering takes a lot of time, the user is just going to leave. If they can't break down your information so quickly and they have to figure out, okay, why is this structured this way, they will just find a better blog, right? You lose writers that way. And the last reason is writing style guides serve as a single source of truth. And what is a single source of truth? A single source of truth is a centralized point of reference that contains information related to your documentation. Say, okay, styles of formatting, styles of editing, your grammar rules are all centralized in one particular spot. So your editors and your writers can all go there and reference how they should edit your document. And that's what the writing style guide stands for. That's exactly what it is. So having 10 writers on large projects is not a problem because they have only one single source of truth that helps them in writing. Now, some popular style guides. We're just going to run through this. Now, you have publishing style guides. Publishing style guides serve as the background for most style guides we see. They help in publishing books, and most of them we have the Chicago Manual of Style, Associated Press Style Book, MLA Style Book, APA Style Book, and GAP. Then we go to technical writing style guide. This is used among technical writers, right? And one of the popular ones, the most popular one here is the Google Developer Documentation Style Guide. But amongst that, you have the Apple Style Guide, IBM Style Guide, Microsoft Manual of Style. Now, content style guide, I mentioned two already from Digital Ocean and MDN Docs. Or you also have the one from Red Hat and Mailchimp. All links to this will be provided on the on the video, right? And then to the main topic of the day: how do you create your own writing style guide? Now, you already know what a style guide is, and you know why it's important. So, how do you structure it? The first step in creating your style guide is establishing your company's brand. This simply means, how does your company likes to be seen by its readers? Are they friendly? Are they do they add humor to their writing and all that and all that? What's the mission of the company? What's the vision of the company? This is where you communicate that to the writers, so that they know going forward when writing for our documents, this is how we like the company to be seen. And a good example of this is seen by Slack. So when you go to the Slack um, writing style guide, they have their values placed out there for you. They stand for empathy, playfulness, solidarity, and all that. So when any writer is crafting any documentation for Slack, these are the rules they follow. So you know these are how the Slack brand likes to be represented. Okay. So when you establish the brand, what next? Now you use an existing publishing guide. I talked about publishing guides earlier, right? You don't have to build your writing style guides from scratch. The publishing guides are used for publishing books that you can use as a base for your own style guide. Now, for technical documents, most technical documents use the APA style guide. Another popular one is the MLA handbook. So you have to check out one of these style guides, then use them as a base. The next one, or one of the most important ones, is defining a tone and a voice. Now, these two concepts are mostly misconstrued together, but the tone sets the mood for writing, and the voice sets the personality you're writing in. Right? A good example of this is from Mailchimp, but different examples of tone and voice, I'll give it to you coming soon. But let's check out the Mailchimp example. So when you go to Mailchimp, they have the way they like their tone and their voice to be represented. Now you can see here they say our humor is dry, and that's under their voice. And if you go further down, you see how they like their tone to be represented to their readers. Example of tone and voice: you have for tone, you have excited, formal, informative, playful, serious. For a voice, you can have a friendly voice, authoritative voice, humorous, reflective, and compassionate. So you have to decide, okay, how do I like my company to be seen? That, because that's the main guiding point that will help you to decide what kind of tone and what kind of voice you will use to represent to your readers. The next one, you move further to grammar and punctuation. Setting these rules requires you to ask various questions to yourself, and they by answering these questions, you know how further or how to structure your style guide, right? So setting grammar and punctuation rules, you're going to ask, am I going to use passive or active voice? This is a very, very common question you ask in technical writing space. Most times it's always active voice, but who knows? Your company might want to decide to say, okay, we like to use passive voice. Are semicolons allowed? And all those kind of stuff. So this is where you're going to define how you set your grammar and your punctuation for your document. And a good example of this is in Shopify, right? How they structured their brand, they said you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that for active or passive voice. Yeah. So moving on, you're setting the rules for formatting. Usually some guides join formatting rules with grammar, but there's a difference because formatting refers to how you present your content to your readers. You ask questions like, should I use bold or italics, headings or subheadings? What kind of lists are preferable? Right, this is where formatting comes in. And a good example of this is seen with the Google Developer documentation. Right, this is a very large documentation, but when it comes to their formatting rules, you get to see how they state how to use bold, how to use italics, and all that. Then we'll move on to terminologies and abbreviations. For terminologies and abbreviations, you have to ask questions like, how do I use initials? So take for example, my name is Prince Oyana. If you're going to use an initial, you're going to use the full stop in between your initials. How do you introduce your abbreviations? Do you introduce the abbreviation first, then have the full word first, then have the abbreviation in brackets? How do you do that? A good example is seen in the 18F style guide, right? To tell you how to use your abbreviations right here. As you can see. Now, most times, technical writers are not in charge of images or creating images. But if you're going to handle images for your documentation, you should know how to properly represent them, right? Yeah. So you're going to ask questions like, what's the preferred image format? Is it PNG? Is it JPG? Should these images include a brand logo? As I said, most times you're not going to have to handle all this, but if you do, these are some things you should put to consideration. And then DigitalOcean does a good work when it comes to defining how images are for their blog, right? So use the .png format, host images on Ingor, and all that. So you just set the rules for how the users will use or manage images. So basically, that's it. The the 5 or 6 sections of writing style guide we talked about on how to create them. You go through setting your brand using a publishing guide. You go through setting your tone and your voice. You go through grammar, formatting, terminologies, and then you go through images. Once you have these important sections already pinned down in your style guide, your reader will be able to properly create a document. These are the major style guides that a user has to know to properly create good content for you. There are more, but these are the one of the most, or some very, very important parts of writing style guides, right? You already know why they're important to you, so you should always use them. For a large documentation, writing style guides usually come in handy. But if you're a sole writer, you most times may not take into consideration how you represent your brand. But going forward, I think you should. You may not have an entire document that says, okay, this is how I want my brand to be represented, right? But you might have little things you add to your own style of writing that's consistent with all your documents. So when a reader reads your article, it's like, okay, I think this article was written by Prince. He always does this, he always does that, right? But the most important thing you should always keep in mind when it comes to style guides is that you should be consistent. If you take up a style guide, make sure to follow it to the end. You don't skip from side to side. Make sure you use the style guide from the beginning to the end. That's the most important thing, consistency. If you're using one style of heading, you follow it from the top to bottom, regardless of whatever style you're trying to use. That's why you must always you rely on style guides. And yeah, I think that's it. So, am I going to be seeing your style guides? Yeah, I would like to see them. So, if you like to reach out, you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. And until next time, thank you, and I hope you actually learned something. Bye.